Most children are afraid of the monster hiding under the bed, but the Foundation knows the real danger isn't lurking in the shadows beneath you. It's waiting at the very edge of your mattress, watching for the exact moment your feet slip out from under the safety of the covers. If you're listening to this in bed, you might want to tuck your toes back inside the sheets.
Item number SCP-072. Object Class Safe.
Special Containment Procedures. All known instances of SCP-072 are to be contained within a standard holding cell at Biosite 12. Access is restricted to Level 2 personnel and higher. The containment area must be kept under low light conditions to prevent accidental activation by unauthorized staff. Under no circumstances are any beds, mattresses, or sleeping mats to be introduced into the containment chamber unless specifically approved for testing purposes.
Any staff members assigned to monitor SCP-072 must ensure their footwear remains securely fastened at all times. In the event of an accidental manifestation, the affected individual is to be removed from the bed immediately by 2 or more staff members. Use of a long-handled retrieval tool is recommended to avoid contact with the anomaly.
Description: SCP-072 is an anomalous phenomenon that manifests in specific types of beds, typically those featuring a footboard or a distinct frame at the base. The anomaly is not the bed itself, but a translucent, shadowy projection that appears to be a humanoid hand, approximately 0.9 meters in length. This hand, designated SCP-072-1, possesses exceptionally long, tapered fingers that end in sharp, needle-like points.
SCP-0721 only manifests when a human subject enters a state of deep sleep, specifically REM sleep, while occupying a bed that has been infected by the anomaly. The manifestation is triggered specifically when the subject allows one or both feet to hang over the edge of the mattress or remain uncovered by blankets. The behavior of SCP-0721 follows a consistent 4-stage progression. Stage 1, the tapping. Once the subject is in deep sleep and their feet are exposed, SCP-0721 will emerge from the foot of the bed. It will use its index finger to lightly tap the subject's exposed foot.
This tapping appears to be a method of gauging the depth of the subject's sleep. If the subject wakes up or moves during this stage, SCP-072-1 retreats instantly and will not reappear for at least 24 hours. Stage 2, the paralysis. If the subject remains asleep, SCP-072-1 wraps its fingers around the exposed foot. At this point, the subject enters a state of total physical paralysis. While the subject remains conscious of their surroundings, often waking up due to the sensation of touch, they are unable to move any muscle in their body, including their vocal cords. Subjects report a sensation of extreme cold radiating from the point of contact.
Stage 3, the harvest. Using its sharp, needle-like fingertips, SCP-072-1 begins to prune the foot. It does not use brute force. Instead, it carefully and methodically removes small portions of flesh, starting with the toenails and moving to the tips of the toes. The process is described by surviving subjects as excruciatingly painful, yet the paralysis prevents any reaction. SCP-072-1 appears to possess surgical precision, avoiding major arteries to ensure the subject does not bleed out prematurely. Stage 4, the conclusion.
Once SCP-072-1 has removed the desired amount of biological material, usually all the toes and portions of the metatarsal bones, it retreats back into the foot of the bed. The harvested material disappears along with the entity. The subject's paralysis fades immediately after the entity vanishes, often resulting in the subject entering a state of shock or extreme physical distress.
Research indicates that SCP-072 does not eat the flesh in a traditional sense. Chemical analysis of the sites where the flesh was removed shows a complete absence of cellular residue, suggesting the material is being transported or phased elsewhere.
Discovery Log. SCP-072 was first identified following a series of mysterious industrial accidents in a high-end apartment complex in Chicago. Local police were baffled by reports of residents waking up with their toes surgically removed while they slept. Initial theories involved a local serial killer with medical training. However, when a foundation plant in the local precinct noted that the victims all lived in units furnished with the same brand of designer mahogany bed frames, the foundation intervened.
8 bed frames were confiscated, and the infected furniture was traced back to a specific batch manufactured in a facility that had been closed due to a fire 3 years prior.
Experiment Log 072-A. Subject is D2319, a 28-year-old male. Subject is placed in an infected bed with feet exposed. Cameras are equipped with infrared and high-speed motion sensors. At 0214, D2319 enters REM sleep. SCP-072-1 manifests from the gap between the mattress and the footboard. It is nearly invisible to the naked eye, but appears as a distinct thermal void on infrared.
SCP-0721 performs Stage 1, tapping the subject's right big toe 3 times. D2319 does not wake. At 0216, SCP-0721 initiates Stage 2. D2319's eyes snap open. His heart rate spikes to 140 beats per minute, indicating intense fear and pain, but his body remains perfectly still.
At 0218, Stage 3 begins. SCP-0721's fingers begin to slice through the skin. There is no sound of cutting. The flesh simply separates, as if the entity is unmaking the molecular bonds of the subject's body. D2319's pupils are blown wide. He is clearly screaming internally, but no sound escapes.
At 025, the entity has removed all 5 toes from the right foot. It pauses, taps the left foot, and begins the process again. At 02035, SCP-072-1 retreats. D2319 immediately lets out a guttural scream and collapses into a state of unconsciousness from the pain. Medical staff intervene. The wounds are clean, showing no signs of tearing or jagged edges. The bone ends are perfectly smooth, as if polished.
Experiment Log 072-B. Subject D3442. The goal of this test is to determine if protective clothing can prevent manifestation. Subject is provided with heavy-duty steel-toed work boots and thick wool socks. At 0300, D3442 is asleep. SCP-072-1 manifests. It attempts to tap the foot, but finds the boot in the way.
The entity appears to become agitated, its shadowy form flickering. It does not retreat. Instead, it begins to use its long fingers to unlace the boots. The laces are undone with impossible speed. The boots and socks are pulled off and dropped quietly onto the floor. SCP-072-1 then proceeds to Stage 1 as normal.
Incident Report 072 Omega. On September 14th, a containment breach occurred not through physical escape, but through biological contamination. It was discovered that SCP-072 has a parasitic method of reproduction. If a person who has been harvested by SCP-072-1 sleeps in a non-anomalous bed within 72 hours of the attack, that bed has a 60% chance of becoming a new instance of SCP-072.
This was discovered when a junior researcher who had been present during a testing session and accidentally touched an infected mattress went home to his off-site apartment. 3 days later, he was admitted to the hospital with the characteristic pruning injuries. By the time the Foundation realized the connection, 3 other beds in the researcher's apartment complex had become infected.
A localized burn and replace protocol was initiated. All furniture in the building was incinerated under the guise of a bedbug infestation. The Foundation has since updated containment procedures to include a mandatory quarantine for any staff members who come into physical contact with an infected bed frame.
Researcher note, Dr. Aristone. There is a psychological element to SCP-072 that we are only beginning to understand. During interviews with survivors, they don't just talk about the pain, they talk about the politeness of the thing. The way it taps first, the way it waits for you to be truly deep in sleep before it checks on you. It's as if it's asking for permission, and by leaving your feet out, you've given it.
Even more disturbing are the reports from subjects who have suffered multiple attacks. One D-class subject, after losing his toes, was kept in containment for observation. Despite the trauma, he found himself unable to sleep unless his feet were exposed. He described a pull or a yearning to feel that cold touch again. We believe SCP-072 might produce a secondary anomalous effect, a form of Stockholm Syndrome or localized addiction that compels victims to offer more of themselves to the entity. We are currently investigating the possibility that SCP-072 is not just one entity, but a collective consciousness. When one bed is destroyed, the memory of the harvest seems to persist in the others. We have observed SCP-0721 manifestations becoming more efficient, more aggressive, in direct response to our testing protocols. It is learning. It knows we are watching, and it knows that eventually everyone gets tired. Eventually, everyone lets their guard down.
The Foundation's primary concern now is the commercial distribution of the original bed frame line. We have recovered 45 instances, but the manufacturer's records suggest over 300 were sold across the United States and Europe before the factory fire. There are hundreds of people out there right now, sleeping on a ticking time bomb.
They might go years without ever dangling a foot over the edge, but the moment they do, SCP-0721 will be there to greet them. The medical community continues to report unexplained peripheral neuropathic trauma in various urban centers. We monitor these reports closely. Every time a patient shows up at an ER with missing toes and no memory of how it happened, our retrieval teams are deployed to sanitize the bedroom.
If you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night with the feeling that the air in your room has suddenly turned cold, do not move, do not look toward the foot of your bed, and whatever you do, keep your feet under the covers, because once the tapping starts, you belong to the bed.
Subscribe for more Foundation archive.